All right, welcome back. It's great to be here with you again, and I just want to commend you for hanging in there and making it through all of this content. I know that it's a little dense and there's a lot coming at you. So in this session, I'm going to lighten up a little bit and I'm going to try to shorten this up. At least that's my hope. We'll see what actually happens. We're really going to be covering two simple topics, and I'm going to make them very easy for you to understand. So the first topic is what I call the anatomy of a word. We take words for granted in society, so we almost never stop to think about what it is we're saying and speaking into the lives of those around us, or what we're listening to and allowing to be planted inside of us in return. So I'm going to be taking a look at words, and I'm going to split them up and show you how a word really is seed in your life. The second topic we're going to talk about is kind of a big topic, but I'm just going to make it really, really simple and easy to understand, and it's the topic of dualism. Many books have been written on it. I'm going to break it down and talk about it just very simply. So again, I'm teaching to the principle, and the principle is always very simple. So that's what we're going to be taking a look at. But before we dive in, I want to take a second to recap the previous lesson, because we're going to be relying on the previous two lessons and building on the concepts that I discussed there. So if you have not watched the entire previous two lessons, you need to pause this video and come back to it after you've watched that. Otherwise, it's not really going to make any sense to you. Okay, so on our recap, cause and effect, also called reaping and sowing, here we observe the graph, and I discussed the 80-20 rule, which essentially states that 80% of your results come from 20% of your effort or your time. Okay, and 80% of your income comes from 20% of your customers, or approximately. Okay, the degree to which your life is out of alignment with the 80-20 rule shows you where we need to make adjustments to create exponential results with minimal effort. Okay, the fatal trap many business owners fall into is the belief that in order to attract more clients, they need to offer more. So in addition to, as an example, mowing and edging the lawn, they're also throwing in free fertilizer or free bush trimming or whatever. And they look at their offer as a grocery bag, and they start filling the bag with stuff. It's like going to the store for milk and eggs and leaving with a bag full of chips, bread, and soda in addition to the milk and eggs, but only paying for the milk and eggs. So that's where many people flip the equation. 80% of their time is spent on 20% of their results. And we need to flip that back into alignment and start spending time on the best opportunities, because what the 80-20 rule shows is that most of the time that you spend on the things in your business is wasted. Okay? That is, you're spending time on things that don't make you money or make it easier for your people to make you money. And it ultimately doesn't move you towards your goal. So that's where fires come from, is by living in that 80% rather than the 20. We also talked about protecting sprouts. So I hope that you picked up a journal and have started writing down your sprouts. Very important thing to do. The cycle of reaping and sowing. Thoughts sprout into beliefs. Beliefs grow into conviction, conviction matures into action, and action is what results in a harvest. So very important to know this, because it's built on the crawl, walk, and then run formula that I shared with you in the first lesson. Things must happen in their season. You can't skip a season. What you do, sorry. Oh, sorry. Okay. Misread my notes. Okay, so you're in control of how long each season is. You determine the length, but you cannot bypass any of the steps. Okay, so if you do, look out, because it means that you're not prepared for the new ones that are coming. And last here, what you speak is what you believe, and what you believe, your mind transforms into reality. That was where we left off, and that's really where we're going to be picking up and going in deeper. So just want to remind you that success begins in the mind long before it ever shows up in your life. So remember the story that I shared. I started with a failure mindset, thinking that I was smarter than the other people that I knew that were quite successful in the business already. And I thought, through my own ego, that I would certainly be able to blow them out of the water and be a huge success. So I learned quickly that there was a lot more to business than just flipping over the open sign. I spiraled into many years of believing that I couldn't succeed because of all the challenges that I faced. And what changed in me was belief. Belief really is everything, because what you believe, your mind transforms into reality. And now we're going to jump into this whole words are seeds thing, and I'm going to show you why that is. So what is inside of a seed? A walnut, in this case, here, the photo that you have on your screen. So is that all that's inside of a seed? What else is inside of the seed? And I want you to take a second to see if you have any ideas, and maybe just briefly jot it down in the journal that should be sitting next to you open right now. Pause the video if you need a few more seconds. I'm going to go ahead and continue. So what else is in a seed? Some people might say that a seed is food, but what happens when you eat the seed? It's gone. That's it. It's over. So what else is in the seed? And now that food is off the table, you might look a little deeper into it and say something like, I don't know, potential or opportunity. And I would say, okay, potential for what? Potential for growth, right? Well, why is that? What does a seed do? It reproduces what it came from, right? A seed is a tiny factory that duplicates whatever its source is. So if I planted this walnut in the ground, am I going to get a petunia? Of course not. I'm going to get a walnut tree. So what's inside the seed? A walnut tree is inside the seed. Okay, is that all? Well, the walnut tree is going to produce walnuts, won't it? And now we know that each of those walnuts has a walnut tree inside of it. And each of those trees will make more walnuts. So what's inside that walnut seed right there in the picture? There's an orchard inside of that seed. There's an orchard. There's a legacy. That's what's inside the seed. Is a walnut a good seed or a bad seed? It's a good seed, right? How about this? It has a pretty flower, doesn't it? It looks hospitable, doesn't it? Looks like something you wouldn't mind stepping on accidentally in your bare feet. No? All right then. So words are seed, right? Are there good words and bad words that come out of your mouth? Those words are landing in potting soil, not just of your brain, but the brains of all the people around you that hear the things that you say. So do you like being around negative people? Probably not, because their language drags you down, right? I think that we can all relate to that and think of a time that we've been around people that we'd rather not be. And why is that? It's because your brain is emotional first before it's rational. So here's a guy who is encountering a word, and I want to show you how the brain interprets language, okay, and how words become seeds. Okay, so this guy is encountering the word boat, and just based on the image that I have here, it could be he either sees the word or he hears it. So that word then enters his brain through whatever sense it comes in through. when it enters through the eyes, most languages, that is written languages, are phonetic, meaning that they're made up of symbols that represent different combinations of sounds used to repeat the word that is written. And when it enters through the ears, the ear receives the analog sound wave compression of the vocalization and transmits those vocalizations into meaning in the brain. So basically that's a fancy way of saying sound waves come into your ear and your ear vibrates. There's a little thing in there that vibrates, and that vibration the brain interprets as sound. Okay, either way, the information is being sent to the brain, and the brain has to convert that information, called data, into something that it can understand. So the information travels to the brain, and the brain evaluates it in this stage. And what happens is that information passes through this other image here on the right that I call the mental eye. And the mental eye discerns that the letters or the sounds that it's interpreting are referring to an image that it has stored away in its long-term memory, really in your subconscious. The way that it does that is by converting all that information into an image. So every time you see or hear a word, your brain is converting that data into an image, because the brain does not think in terms of words, it thinks in terms of pictures. And so those mental images are called precepts. All the information that your brain receives, it catalogs and stores as an image, not a word. Okay, your brain does not see words. Like I just said, it sees images. And reading is the process that the brain goes through of deciphering words and converting them into pictures. That's why so many ancient languages started out as being pictographic, not phonetic like modern languages are today. So that's why, also why children's books are very colorful and rich in pictures and have very few words on each page. And when you're reading a children's book, you spend more time talking with the child and discussing about what's in the picture than you are reading the story. That's really the point behind children's books, just in case you didn't know that. Okay, so the child's brain naturally thinks in pictures, and children's books begin the process of training the brain to store images, the precepts, and associate and link them with words. So this process is different when you see the precept your brain already has stored. When you see a boat, in this case, the reasoning process actually bypasses your brain altogether, because it doesn't need to think about what you're seeing per se. It just happens automatically, where you see something and it creates an understanding. So it goes directly to the mind's eye, and it produces the words that are associated with whatever you're looking at, so that when you see a boat, your mouth is able to say boat instinctively. Or if you see a boat in your mind's eye, if you're thinking about it and you're talking about something, you see it, and it happens so fast, but you see it literally in your brain before you ever say it. Okay, that's why language develops later in a child's life. So this is where we run into trouble, and this is why we've developed very precise language over time. My precept is different from your precept. Okay, so sticking with the boat example, in this slide, we have two people who both encounter the word boat at the same time. And because men tend to be a little bit more simple and practical than women, our little guy over here sees the word boat, and in his mind, this is the image it produces, a little rowboat. But because women tend to be a little bit more refined and sophisticated than men, when she sees the word boat, this is what pops into her mind. This is a picture of a, I don't know, $50 million super yacht or something. So what this is meant to show you is that the same word has different meanings to different people. And both of these pictures here are a precept, just an example of a precept and variation in that. So there's a reason for that. And to understand why that is, I made this illustration here to show you the anatomy of what a word actually is. Okay, and before I go in, I just want to make sure that the image of the seed that I had at the beginning is still fresh in your mind. So I'm talking about it so you can recall that image of a walnut seed. Okay, and we just talked about what is a seed. It's a highly sophisticated device with a built-in automated internal delivery system that begins instantaneous duplication from the moment the seed has agreement with the soil. And this is really important, so write that down. It's instantaneous duplication from the moment the seed has agreement with the soil. This is really important. So there has to be agreement between the seed and the soil. Otherwise, the seed won't germinate. That's why seeds are really so incredible, because you can seal them up in a clay pot and stick them in a tomb for a few thousand years and let them hang out with a dead guy, and they won't grow, and they won't go bad. So they just sit there in the pot waiting for the right moment to begin their work. It's really very incredible. So a seed comes into contact with soil, and the soil is warmed by the sun and moistened by the rain or irrigation or whatever. And the seed is then covered by soil, and the soil and seed enter an agreement that it's the right time for this baby to send out roots and shoots simultaneously in opposite directions. And the seed just automatically knows, miraculously in my opinion, how to do that. Like, you never plant a seed upside down. And I guess technically you do, but even if you do, the seedling figures it out, and it just automatically goes the right way. Okay, so with words, it's identical. Your head is literal potting soil, and the reason why is because your head, your body is literally made from elements of the earth, i.e., dirt. Okay, and your head is the densest part of your body. So your head is literally potting soil, and as words are planted into your brain, what happens? So if you've been taking notes and paying attention, you remember the cycle of reaping and sowing. Okay, thoughts or words sprout into belief. And how is that? It's because you hear a word and you do two things. Number one, you receive the word. Okay, this is far and away the biggest reason why people struggle in life. Someone somewhere in your life said something stupid to you, like, for example, just a total example, you're bad at math. Okay, that was something that was spoken over my life. And not knowing any better, you receive that, I received that, and created agreement with the words. And number two is you believe it. Okay, whatever you agree with, you automatically believe in. Okay, the ground first has to receive the seed, and then the earth and the seed must have an agreement. And the seed sprouts and grows into whatever was intended to be sown there. So in the case of someone who says that, Cody, you're bad at math, that's what was sown into me as a child by my teacher. And sometimes these words come from parents, or maybe a pastor or a youth leader or someone of significance in your life. Okay, a child receives a word and believes it. And what do they reap all throughout their life? Well, I always struggled with math. As we mature, we start to make excuses for our weaknesses. And this is why I told you from the beginning that excuses are nothing but well-planned lies. Okay, we start to say stupid things like, I just don't have a brain built for math, or I'm not gifted in that area and other people are. Well, that type of thinking is nothing but a flat-out lie. Okay, I need to be careful not to get ahead of myself here, but I just want to say that I'm not calling you a liar. We all do this to some degree. Even I do it. Okay, that's why I'm talking about it, is I'm an expert in this. Okay, but I've learned how to be on guard against these things. So in the second example of, being gifted or not being gifted, and this is very common, when you believe that you need to be gifted in something in order to succeed, the way that your brain interprets that is that you're not gifted. That's it. That's all it thinks about. and therefore it won't succeed. Success will be elusive in your life. And the truth is that your brain is actually really kind of dumb, because this is the way it operates. It just believes stuff without ever thinking about it. It is so important to know this, because we tend to believe that our brain is basically who we are, because we're taught that the brain controls all the functions of the body. But I just want to take a moment to quote everyone's favorite little green man, Master Yoda, who said it best when he told Luke Skywalker, "Luminous beings are we, not this crude matter." That's my best attempt at a Yoda impersonation there. But the point is that you are not your brain. Your body is not really who you are. Who you are is beyond your brain. It's beyond your whole body, and it's really something else entirely. All right, getting back on track here. So I want to talk about the image on the slide. On the left here is literally the word word. And I want to show you that words are split into two parts, just like a seed has two parts. Okay, but in a word, there's a physical and a metaphysical meaning pertaining to the mind. Okay, so the first part of a word is the precept, and we already talked about that. It's the image association of a physical object. Okay, the precept is the principle of a word. For example, the word boat, the precept, this is the precept image, is a container that floats on the water that transports people or cargo. Okay, so hold on to that for just a minute. The second part of a word here on the bottom is the concept. Okay, that's the interpretive mind's eye association. It's the metaphysical meaning that the delineation exists inside the mind. Okay, it's the value expression of a precept. So when we say the word boat, what's implied but not asked is what kind of boat. The kind of boat is the concept. Boat is the precept. A rowboat is the concept, or a $50 million super yacht, or a sailboat. Okay, so we add two words to define the concept. So if we're talking about a boat in general conversation, everyone automatically understands that we're talking about an object, a container that floats on water, that transports people and cargo wherever, right? But we have to add words to that to create specificity, okay? And those words together, those precepts, build the concept. Are you getting this? Is that making sense to you? So what all this means is whoever controls the meaning of a word controls the conversation, the debate, or the mind. So if these two people are talking about boats, it's up to one of them to define what's actually being talked about. Otherwise, one of two things is going to happen. They will use the same word and be thinking of different things. And this happens all the time in marriage, especially. Imagine two people, that these two people here are married. And she says, "You know what, darling, our 10th anniversary is coming up. And I was thinking it would be great to leave the kids with the grandparents and go on a romantic boat ride together." Okay, now our poor guy over here, when he hears the words romantic boat ride, he's thinking that they're two separate things, right? When he hears romance, he's thinking about what's going to take place in the bedroom on the anniversary night. Am I right? And that's why that's really what he's interested in. But when a woman talks about romance, she's talking about the whole experience, not just the bedroom. So our little guy's primitive brain is like, okay, I need boat, I get romance. But when she's thinking about the boat, she's thinking about the package. She's thinking about the all-inclusive fine dining, the poolside massage, the mani-pedi, the soft light, a fresh bouquet of flowers beside the bed, champagne chilling on ice, rose petals in the tub, because of course she wants the honeymoon suite, right? That's just a hint, guys. what she's thinking about is, I want to revisit the emotional roots of when our marriage was new. Okay, she wants to feel special. She wants to feel pursued by her man. She wants to know that she's still captivating to her man. That's why she wants the package. So if the wife really wants to have her experience and the husband wants to get the romance, right, then it's important that you take control of the conversation from the beginning to create clarity. Okay, the other thing that can happen is control can be deliberate and used to manipulate people. And most people aren't like that, but well, you've got another thing coming if you think that politicians don't absolutely have their meat hooks sunk deep inside your brain by manipulating people with words. Okay, they will do it every time they are in front of a camera or a microphone. They're manipulating people with words, and that's why it's so important to know this stuff. And when you do, and you develop the skill, it's very easy to tell when people are lying to you. Okay, don't forget that. All right, now I want to get into where this is all leading. So this is the big so what. Why do I need to know this stuff for my business and my life? And it's this statement right here. This is what I was getting ahead of myself a little bit here a few minutes ago when I was talking about people who were told that they were bad at math. Okay, and you can't claim one thing to be true without also subconsciously acknowledging its counterpart to be true. So if you say something like, I have to work 80 hours a week in my business in order for it to survive, then what you're saying is that your business won't survive if you don't. Does that make sense? So in the instance where you believe that you're bad at math, when you say, I don't have a brain for math, its counterpart is the agreement that one needs some kind of special brain to do math, and that you do not possess that brain. And see, the second part of both these examples shows what your belief is. Your belief is actually what you aren't saying, but your words reveal what your belief actually is. So when someone is telling me that they have to fill in for an employee who quit unexpectedly, I understand that what they're actually saying is that they don't believe that there's any other way to get through their situation than that for them to fill in all the time. So what you believe you are defines all things which you are not. If you come to me and say that you're afraid of public speaking, what you actually believe is that people will view you negatively if you do. Okay, and this is really critical here. I want you to grasp this point and use it as a very humbling sort of experience, because even deeper than belief is judgment. Okay, people who are afraid of public speaking, what their real fear is of being judged. And why would that be? It's because they created a belief that people will view them negatively. So they want to avoid the pain of an embarrassment that they're actually making up in their mind. Okay, they're making it up in their mind. This belief of an imagined pain, of an imagined embarrassment that hasn't actually happened. But they didn't just pull that idea out of their butt. Okay, it had to come from somewhere. And the place where it comes from is a place of judgment. They see themselves being viewed the same way they view of or think of other people who speak publicly, especially those that they're critical of. Hello, politicians. Okay, that's why you have to be on guard about what comes out of your mouth. Okay, because what you're saying, positive or negative, is going to come back to you, especially if you're saying it against a person and not the action or the idea. Okay, so that's why so many business owners struggle to sell. They all have judgments against salespeople. They judge the archetype of the used car salesman. And the truth is that what you judge is what you become. So if you hate used car salesmen, you're like, man, I never want to be like that. Guess what's coming your way? Guess how you're coming off to your customers and your prospects. You're coming off as a used car salesman. And then you can't figure out why you can't sell. And it's because judgment has sown a bitter seed in your life, and it's sprouted and grown and taken root, and it's bearing fruit. Okay? So what you judge is what you become every single time. So think of that really the next time that you're listening to Tucker Carlson or Sean Hannity or anyone on any news network or politician. It's all judgment. It's all condemnation. News companies don't sell news. They don't sell drama. They don't sell if it bleeds, it leads. Okay, those things are all just icing on the cake. What they really sell is blame and judgment. They sell an identity of judgment, and people buy it all day long. Okay, so think of all the affairs that you hear about in the news, especially politicians. You know, so-and-so was caught having sex with a Chinese spy. Sure, there's drama there, but what we actually get is judgment. That's why there's almost no virtue in the news anymore. Virtue doesn't sell. It's literally not sexy. You know, think about it. Fauci lied equals judgment. That headline, Fauci lied, and all of the conservative newsreels is judgment. Or this one, Trump is in bed with the Russians. Steele dossier tells all. Okay, that's really common on the left, or at least it was, even long after it was shown to be false. Anyway, that equals judgment. Okay, why do we fall in love with Luke Skywalker and hate the Emperor in the Star Wars saga? And the reason is judgment. Okay, I'm going to share a hugely powerful revelation about that story in Star Wars. So I hope you've seen the story. I think pretty much everyone in America has seen the story. If not, go watch Star Wars Episode 6. I hope that this changes your life forever. Okay, so just a brief recap. The Emperor corrupted Anakin Skywalker, and Anakin Skywalker became Darth Vader, and just in case it's a spoiler alert, Darth Vader has a son, Luke Skywalker. Okay, now we're all on the same page. So in Episode 6, there's an unusual duel where Skywalker refuses to fight the Emperor. So Skywalker, Vader, and the Emperor are all together in a room. And the reason that he refused to fight and kill the Emperor was because that he knew the only way to defeat the Emperor was to become like him. He had to become like the Emperor and kill him in hate and anger rather than justice. Because hate and anger, and this kind of reveals sort of a misconception about what we think of as strength, and that's part of the story, right? Is that we don't really understand what strength is. We think that there's strength and power in things like hate and anger rather than acting justly. So what's so incredible about this part of the story is Darth Vader, who's already been corrupted, he's just kind of standing around watching his son get electrocuted to death by the Emperor. And so Vader is this incredibly evil guy, you know, who's murdered tons of innocent people. Definitely deserves to die, especially according to our judgment, okay? And that's why we really buy judgment, because we want to buy things that we believe in, okay? But there's a principle that I hold very dearly to, and it's very unconventional. And that principle is no one is anything until they're dead. Once you're dead, then the story is over, and you are what you are forever. And it's because of this. And I've trained myself, I worked very hard to train myself to never judge a person, only the action. Okay? And I know that Star Wars is just a made-up story, but it's incredible how the writers captured this so perfectly because it resonates with truth, right? Luke refused to kill his father, even though he had the chance to, because he believed that there was still good in him. And now his father, Darth Vader, and the Emperor were trying to kill him. And at the very end of his life, Vader sacrificed himself to save his son and killed the Emperor in the process. And it was in that moment, his last action of his life, that his goodness was completely restored to him, and he literally came back to the light. So now I'm not suggesting that people should not suffer consequences for their actions or anything ridiculous like that. But what I am suggesting is that we don't know everyone's story. Okay, and to borrow from another great story, The Lord of the Rings, there's a part in the story when Gandalf and Frodo are discussing the creature Gollum. And Frodo says, it's a pity Bilbo didn't kill him when he had the chance. And Gandalf says, pity? It was pity that stayed Bilbo's hand. There are many people who deserve death, says Gandalf. And many have died that deserve life. Can you give it to them, Frodo? And what he's talking about here is judgment. See, the reason judgment is such a trap is because it works to help us feel better about ourselves. We judge others that get caught having affairs so that we can cover up the guilt that we have over our own devious actions that haven't yet come to light. It's our way of inadvertently confessing that what we're doing is wrong and we deserve a type of punishment for it. But we're too afraid to come clean. Why? Because of how we judge other people for the same types of things that we ourselves are guilty of. That's why. So there's a quote that says, "Be at peace with all men." Be at peace with all men. But you can't be at peace with them when you're judging, because you certainly won't have peace within yourself. So this, getting back to the point here, this is the law of duality. I said I was going to try to keep this short. I don't know how I'm doing. I have a feeling that I'm over. Sorry about that. Okay, this is the law of duality. It's like the mountain reflected here in the mirror of the pond. Okay, the reflection is a perfect copy of the original, except it's the exact opposite. Likewise, words, thoughts, and beliefs are reflected in the mirror of your mind. It's the things that are being said, not by actually saying them, that are the most potent. Because while we're sitting here looking at this mountain, we're not thinking about the reflection in the water. We're not thinking about what happens in the water. And so when we're saying something with our mouth or hearing something with our ear, we're not thinking about the opposite of what's not being said, the unspoken thing. So the reflection represents your unconscious and subconscious minds. And your conscious mind is much less alert than you think it is, especially when it comes to the law of duality. This is why words are so critically important. It's the reflection of words that carry the most weight, not the actual word itself. It's because that word is split into those two different legs. You have a precept and a concept, and everybody's busy focusing on the precept, but they're not thinking about the concept. And the concept is what is going to go deep into your soul. Okay, so the reflection is what we tend to be less aware of and we pay less attention to, but our unconscious mind eats it up. And here's why. Only about 20% of your mind is awake and alert. Your conscious mind is lazy and emotional and forgetful. Okay, think about it. In an hour from now, what are you going to remember from this particular slide? Well, I hope you remember this particular slide, but maybe not. Okay, and what do you even remember from the beginning of this presentation? I'm going to tell you what you remember. By the numbers, you only remember about 3 to 7% of the information that I've been sharing with you this whole time. That's why I'm recording this, so you can go back and watch it again and again, because you need to be exposed to it multiple times to really understand it and get the full meaning and full use out of it. Okay, so your unconscious mind, however, remembers everything. Your unconscious mind is vastly more aware of the things that are, coming into you than you actually are, especially when we dive deeper into what's considered the subconscious mind. But that's not the point of our talk today. I just want you to be aware of these things, okay? That's why I have this picture here of the iceberg. The top, what you see. This is your active mind here in the top. That's only 20% of your mind. Okay, the rest of your mind is below the surface and you're completely unaware of it. And it's filled with biases and opinions and beliefs and judgment that have all been put there by you. Okay, but now you've become completely unaware of them because this is all happening automatically and silently in the background. So the beliefs that you speak create unspoken, unconscious agreements in your subconscious mind. That's point number one. And the purpose of your subconscious mind is to make those beliefs real in your life. The unconscious, subconscious mind is more aware of what you are not saying. And that's what it latches onto, and that's what it goes to great work creating in your life. This is why you have a conscious mind. Your unconscious mind does not think about anything. It's a real monster. And it's just a habit-forming, belief-forming machine that just runs numbers and doesn't care about anything else. The whole role of your conscious mind is to tame that lion. And if you don't, it'll just end up taking over your life. And you're going to be a victim of programming that you've spent a lifetime putting into your brain that you're not even aware of. Okay, so it's a little like this. Your conscious mind has the authority, but your unconscious mind has the power. So think about it in terms of our own government. So Congress has the authority, but the military has the power. Congress has no power. Okay, they only have authority. And it's their job to appoint leaders who respect the Constitution and our way of life and who respect the chain of command and won't result in a military coup, a takeover of the country. Okay, and that's how there's the balance of authority and power. And likewise, your conscious mind really has very little power, but it does have all of the authority. And this is important. If you choose to live unaware of these things, the subconscious mind will always win because it's very powerful and it's very difficult to fight it once you lose control. This is where, habits come into play. All right, so there's a division of opposites, and just very basically, good and bad. In order for the mind to understand, it has to have an opposite to compare it to, and that opposite is duality. And the opposite can be something physical like good and bad, light and dark, that creates understanding. And it can also be something spoken and unspoken. And that's really where we've been talking most of the time, is the spoken and unspoken, because it has more power over our life than things that are physical, like up and down or good and bad and right, left and right. Okay, those are physical opposites. I'm talking about metaphysical opposites here. And that division of opposites is called duality. The conscious mind, the mind relies on this dualism, the comparison, to create that understanding. So in other words, in order to understand something, the mind must compare one thing to its opposite. And that's why the mind is latching on to the unspoken things that are happening in conversation, because it needs those unspoken truths in order to compare it to what is being said openly to create the deeper meaning. So this is really the meaning of dualism. That's why you can't make one claim without making another at the same time. And it's always the unspoken claim that reveals where the belief and the judgment really are. Okay, and that's what the sages meant when they said that a wise man hears one word but discerns two. Okay, dualism is where the other words are. So what you believe something is defines all things that it's not. So in conclusion, just to remind you, I hope this was really helpful. All right, and I hope that it wasn't too confusing. I really want your feedback on this so I can figure out how I can make this a little simpler and more clear. But just a reminder, words are seed, and one thing said one time creates a belief, but that is only as if it is received. So what do I mean by that? Well, there's a habit that you need to get good at, and that is consciously receiving and not receiving good and bad words. Okay, so if you're out, planting your garden and you find a weed in the garden, you pull it out, right? I'm not receiving this weed. I'm not going to let it, take root in my garden and in my life. Okay, so that is receiving a bad, not receiving a bad word. But all the good seed that you sow, you protect. Okay, that was our last lesson. We were protecting the sprouts, protecting the seed. Okay, so when someone gives you a compliment, what I want you to start working on is this. I want you to, and it's going to feel a little clunky at first, but you need to just get over that. Okay, you need to say, thank you, I received that. And when someone imposes a false belief on you, I need you to stand in front of it and say, I don't receive that. And this happens all the time, especially with parents that, want to oppose their opinion on someone else's child. Okay, and I've seen this many times where someone says, I think that child has autism, or that child is rebellious, or that child is strong-willed. Then what happens? Before long, the child becomes what was spoken. I've seen it happen so many times. Autism, rebellion, or just resistance, okay, comes out of that child because they heard that word and they received it because an adult said it. And a child has a very simple view of the world and life that if an adult says it, it must be true. And then we take that practice into adulthood along with all the beliefs that we formed as a child. So this is why the words that you speak to your children are so important. And this is also why so many employees behave like children, because they never emotionally, mentally grew up. And it's because of the limiting false beliefs that they have in their life. Okay, so it's important to step in front of that. And I'm not saying, be a jerk and throw it back in someone's face, but when it's appropriate, maybe after the conversation is done and you've left the area, take the time to say, I don't receive that. And pull that bad sucker out by the roots. Because if you don't, it's just going to sit there and it's going to do what seeds do naturally, which is grow. Okay, it's also really important to make sure that you plant something good in the place of where you pull out a bad word. So if someone gives you a negative word and you say, I don't receive that, make sure you wrap it up by saying, the truth is, and then say the opposite. So if someone says, you're no good at math, you say, well, wait a minute, I don't receive that. The truth is, I'm very intelligent and I can learn anything that I want. Okay, so if you have a belief that you aren't good at math, which many people do, then just own it. Okay, you just say, you know what, I don't receive that anymore. The truth is, I have a brain and I can use it to learn and do and succeed at anything that I want. Is this making sense to you? Okay, that's it. Thank you so much for watching. Please complete the survey that I will send at the end of the video. Your feedback is extremely important in helping me teach the content and make sure that you understand it and it's helping you. So help me improve by letting me know what you liked, didn't like, and please make suggestions on something that I can change that'll help you in the future.